Hi everybody, this is Diane. I'm going to show you the last 4 journals in the sewing pattern journal series. And before we look at these, I'm going to show you a pack that I had put together. So this is one pack. They will all vary in images, but they'll have pretty much the same sorts of things. So I did get a pack put together, so now I can show it to you. You'll get a portion of a vintage sewing instruction page. This is from the 40s. I don't know if they'll all be that old. Here's another piece. You'll get some scrapbook paper pieces, some images from patterns and or the catalogs. This is from a pattern. This is from a catalog. Some colorful flashcards, a recipe card, a doily, a bingo card. There should be 2 of these. I'm only seeing 1. Where are the rest of them? Well, I'll try to remember to put the pink one in here. Some playing cards or game cards. Some tickets. Oh, there's another card. Some dry cleaning tickets. A little stencil of a letter or number or both. A little paper coaster. There are some S&H green stamp pages. So you'll either get one with stamps adhered to it or a plain one, but I'll include a few stamps. Some digital flashcards for sewing. This is just torn from a pattern instruction, but this would be really cool in a collage. This is a vintage receipt for undelivered registered mail from 1943. Little digital hair oil label. A few tabs punched with my Stampin' Up! Tab punch. A 1966 calendar page, just a little one. And a couple of leftover digitals. There's another. And 1 floral cigarette card. Some play money or game money. And some price stickers and a lottery ticket. That's what I have in here. I don't know if anything else will be added as I clean up, but I'm trying to do too many things at once. So I've just kind of been doing things hit and miss. All right, so we're going to start with Lisa. And that's named after my youngest sister, who passed away 8 years ago. But Lisa was her name, and I love this pattern. This one is from the 50s. Lisa was born in 1967, so this was before her time, but I love that flared coat. I love the pretty colors and the black and white plaid. And again, if you didn't see the other video, these are made with a vintage sewing pattern, which is Mod Podge to a file folder. This one happens to be a white one. Most of the folders are manila. And then I added rickrack and pom-poms to each one to match. And I added some sort of flower to the front. And a strip of fabric to the spine. This is off-centered because I didn't want to cover up this. And I put the back of the pattern on the back of the journal. And I added seam binding in between the file folder and the fabric. Each one has fabric on the inside all the way across. So the spine has fabric on the inside and the outside. Each one has a library card, but it's a paper with collage around it, and each one has a piece of a vintage cloth measuring tape. They all have pretty much the same layout. There are some differences, and of course the images are different. This is a really cute scrapbook paper with the children from the 1930s with pattern numbers. So these were advertising patterns. And this is a pocket that I made out of a file folder. And I put a little strip of vintage wallpaper here, a piece of the dry cleaning tickets there, and a piece from a pattern instruction sheet. And there's a tag inside with a digital button card. I had a lot of digital button cards that I used in these journals. And this is a vintage or antique postcard. I love that little girl looking for a letter in the mailbox. And this is dated 1921. There's a recipe card inside from the Betty Crocker recipe card library. There's a piece of vintage lace here on the edge. Another digital button card. This is digital, and this is cut from a sewing pattern, and that's a strip of vintage ledger. Every journal has this kind of a thing, except all the rest of them. This is a tuck spot, but I glued it down here and forgot. So I clipped the piece that would have been tucked into the tuck spot up there. This is cut from a pattern book, and she's sitting on something, so when you glue her down, you might want to make it look like there's something for her to sit on. And this is a digital vintage gift wrap here. There are 52 pages, I believe, 52 or 54. It'll be in the description. That's counting front and back. These are dry cleaning tickets, and that's a digital button. This is the only digital page in the journals is a page from So Sweet, I think it's called. It's a digital kit from Polka Dot Pixels, and there are 5 sheets in there. And I see she has another one now, So Sweet 2, and I think there's a So Sweet Ephemera, or there's another one, another sewing bundle in her shop. I stamped that little girl. This is the cover for a pattern for an antique doll. For the collectible dolls. I got a bunch of these patterns from a garage sale years ago. There's a ledger paper. That's not an old one, but that is a vintage little children's playing card there. And this is a vintage page from a Sears catalog with the little girls' dresses with the full skirts. And here's another vintage pattern with little girls' clothing. And a paper flower and a jeweled little flower there. But the green is from a vintage millinery flower. There's a digital button card and a dyed paper. I am going to have to add some tape here. I reinforced the pattern. These pattern envelopes are fragile, and you can see it's torn there because you can see the white side of this paper. But I reinforced it, and I see it's tearing right along that, so I'm going to reinforce it again with some vintage cellophane tape or just another piece of paper. Here is a pocket made with a bingo card and digital collage pieces. And this is cut from a pattern book on a collaged background. There's a little digital girl on a piece of stationery. She's just clipped on. This is a page from a sewing book and a little colored doily punch out there and a little digital library card. Dyed lined paper, a page from a 1970s book, I believe, sewing book. Here's just a journaling card that I made with cardstock and sewing tissue, sewing instructions, and this little girl that was, I think she was cut from a pattern, and this little fabric flower with a button. This one is the double pocket. Each journal has a double pocket. And I did add some of my vintage cellophane tape there because it was tearing up there. There's a guest check that you can collage on or just write on. And a flashcard. These children were cut from pattern envelopes. A digital button card. A 1973 lottery ticket. I like the color. And this cute little math card. Aren't those dresses pretty? She's a digital. This is from an old magazine from the 1930s, I believe. It's advertising fabric. It's the back of that doll pattern cover. And this is a pocket. And I took this image from an old magazine and glued it to cardstock and added a tab to it. There's another little girl stamp there. And a limeade label as a pocket. This is a dry cleaning tag and another lottery ticket with pretty colors. Clipped on is Monopoly money and some tickets and a digital button card. And this is an Avon plastic clip. I got a box of these from eBay. And it's clipped to the vintage wrapping paper. Just some pages you can write on here. There's a library card, a daily agenda, and there are 2 of those. And they're glued at the top. A little digital here. I love this little girl. She just makes me smile. And she's from a 1940s magazine. It's that paper again with the 1930s kids. And she's backed onto some red cardstock, and she's a pocket. And there's a strip of leftover scrapbook paper, and this little girl was from a pattern that was very beat up. There's some tape on it. This part was just missing, so I just put a piece of scrapbook paper back there. And you can just tell it was very beat up, but I love this image. I need to erase that. This is a file folder. And apparently this was the part of the folder that I wrote on. And I don't want to forget to erase it. Okay, sorry about that. And on the back cover is a tomato seed packet and another lottery ticket. They don't all have this many lottery tickets, I don't think. I think I just forgot I put some in and stuck another one in. That goes inside the packet, and then this goes behind it. This is cut from vintage pattern. So this one is Lisa. These are all untied because I took their pictures and I didn't want to tie them up again, just to untie them and look at them with you. This one is a bit of a wider seam binding, which I really, really like. It's vintage. So I named one of the patterns that I listed the other day, Virginia, for my grandmother. And she had 3 sisters. So the rest of them are named for her 3 sisters. And this one is for the youngest, and her name was Vivan. All of these patterns are McCall's, and they all have 2 ladies on the front with a scene behind them. So that's why I did these all in one collection. I used some vintage green rickrack, and this is a vintage pom-pom. And there's some needles on the fabric, printed on the fabric. And so I'm just going to quietly show you. I'll speak when I have to. A children's book page here with some black crochet trim on it. This is a captain's log from a boat. I got a book of it, and this one does have writing on this side, and it's from 1970. Cruise from Myers, I don't know what it says on the other, Myers, New York. Talks about the time, the wind, the weather. And this is from a vintage magazine, and this was starting to tear here because I put this bluish paper here for reinforcement, but the paper was so brittle that it wanted to fold against that paper, and it was starting to crack. So I put vintage cellophane on this side, and on this side I added another little strip of paper, so it's not so tight, wanting to bend against it. Does that make sense? I love this pattern with the pretty blouses, and this is a vintage millinery flower. I used quite a few of these because they're nice and flat. This one I had the flap at the top. Most of them I didn't have the flap for these inside envelopes, but that one I did. So I just folded it there and glued it. And this is a piece of gummed tape that a mercantile store, general store, used in Farmington, Maine. I don't know how old it is. I got that in a Happy Mail from Emily from Polka Dot Pixels, and she's the one who designed that digital paper. There is a digital Queen Mary Inexhaustible Salts bottle there. She's cut from an envelope. Underneath this, we have a piece of, this is cut from a pattern catalog. I just made it into a journaling card. From the 70s, that page is. And there's a lottery ticket and a digital card in there. Somebody wrote $1 million on this 50-cent lottery ticket from 1973. This is from a 1940s magazine. And there's an index card and just a scrapbooking card in there. This was from a vintage magazine from the 1940s, Give a Face Powder Party. And I put a pressboard tag, divided tab in there, tabbed card, I guess that's what I want to say. And these are just some die-cut flowers. So the ship cruised to Baldwinsville, New York, and arrived at 2 p.m. That was a long trip. (6:30 a.m. to 2 p.m.), going 15 miles an hour. And Wright's bias tape package that was glued to cardstock. This is a digital ephemera piece. Just wanted to give you an extra writing piece. This is a real vintage rent receipt and an antique postcard. 1916. This one just has a small pocket because I didn't want to cover up the dress form, but it's for making buttonholes, an attachment for your machine, and this is just a little collaged journaling card. I did punch a thumb notch there to help get these things back in, but it's small. So this one is Vivan. Next we have June. I think she was the next to the oldest. And this one has a pretty red dress with dolman, no, it's not dolman sleeves, but they're wide sleeves at the top. There's a seam there. If it didn't have a seam, it would be a dolman sleeve, I think. But it's got red rickrack and then this vintage trim at the bottom, which is really cute. It's got a white pom-pom with black fringe. They're cut from a pattern book, and I thought this piece, which might be from Mrs. Coggs, I think it is, but I'm not sure. But I love that patchwork piece with the reds on their dresses. I thought they went perfectly. This is wrapping paper. This is a nursery rhyme book page from a 1940s magazine. This is a dress made with two major pattern pieces, 1 and 2, front and back. This, I believe, was an illustration for a magazine, or a story in a magazine. There's a sewing pattern with the millinery flower. Scrapbook paper. This is a claim check. These ladies were cut from a pattern envelope, and those are digital buttons. And this is vintage pattern instruction paper. There's a digital label in here. Isn't that a cute outfit? So these pattern pages are from 1974 and 1975, I believe. Stationery. This lady was cut from a magazine, and I liked that her elbow is leaning on the music when I glued her there. This one, instead of a double pocket here and here, I didn't want to cover up this little girl, and then I had this little girl too, so I kept them both and made this a little tuck spot and this a pocket. So pocket back there and tuck spot right here. This is an ad for Maybelline mascara and a tag in there. This is a real vintage label that I used on this tag. And this number was cut from a pattern instruction sheet. These stamps on the Grown Up Lady pattern book, sorry, they're Simplicity stamps, and I don't know if they're available anymore. I got them. You can look for them online, Simplicity wooden stamps, but I don't see them in the craft stores anymore. Another rickrack package, and just a piece of scrapbook paper. It looks like a crocheted tablecloth or a doily there. And an antique postcard. This one's not used, so there's no date. And some rouge, an advertisement for rouge. And this is from a pattern catalog. just sewn to a piece of paper. And here we have a beet seed packet, and this is from one of the children's books. I think it's from the coat that's on the Lisa journal. And I didn't do anything. I didn't back it to anything. I didn't know if you'd want to cut it and glue it, or I didn't know what you'd want to do with it. So it's just in there for you to play with. And this one is a digital. Okay, so that one is June. And then last we have Frances, and I believe she was the eldest of the sisters. We have an olive green shirt dress, and this printed one with green and orange and cream brown. So we have orange rickrack and pale yellow pom-pom. And white seam binding. That looks good. Nursery rhyme page again. That's a label, a digital label. And picture from a 1940s magazine. And this side I covered with a digital French embroidery paper. And she's from a 1940s magazine. And tucked in there is a digital label and the vintage rent receipt. Oh, I do have another flap. I backed that to coffee dyed grid paper. It's from Pattern Sewing Instructions. This is from a Sears catalog with it's Spiegel catalog, and it's ladies' razors. Seam binding label, and this is another antique postcard. 1909. And a scrapbook paper tucked in there that you can play with or just use to write on. Now, instead of gift wrap, this one has part of an Izzard's bag, and I mentioned that in a different video when I showed this bag. I hope this is light enough. When I look at my camera, it looks pretty dark. But this was a department store that was in Elmira, New York. And I've mentioned it before that my mother, they had a fashion show on Saturdays on TV, and my mother would watch it. It wasn't every Saturday, but she watched it some. So that's what this reminds me of. And it does have Elmira, New York landmarks on it, including the Clemens Center, named after Samuel Clemens, whose pen name was Mark Twain, of course. This is from an early 1900s magazine, Liquid Silmarine. 'Twas a crowning glory indeed when waved and beautified the silmarine way. This is cut from a pattern book, and I just glued it to this piece of cardstock, patterned cardstock. And that concludes the flip through of 8 journals. I did 4 in the first one and 4 in this one. So when you see this video, they are all in my shop, and I was grateful that the last 4 I listed all sold pretty quickly. I wasn't sure if they would because it was so close to Christmas. Maybe they're being purchased for Christmas gifts for yourself or for others. I don't know. But I have 4 more available, and so I said if the other ones sold well, I would just go ahead and list these before Christmas. So when you see this video, they're there in my shop unless they're already sold. So just once again, this one is Lisa, Vivian, June, and Francis. Thank you so much for coming to flip through these with me, and I hope that you are having a creative day. Bye.